February 18th, 2002. A telephone rings inside the Oakland Raiders headquarters. On the other end of that call is a decision that will haunt this franchise for the next 20 years. A decision that will transform a Super Bowl contender into a laughingstock. A decision that will hand a championship trophy directly to the enemy. But here is what nobody understands about that phone call. The man who answered it knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the consequences. He knew what he was about to destroy. And he made the trade anyway. Why? That question has never been properly answered. The official explanation makes no sense. The money involved does not justify the outcome. The logic falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. Unless there is something we do not know. Unless there is a piece of this story that has been hidden for over 2 decades. I found that piece. And by the end of this video, you will understand why the Oakland Raiders did not just lose 1 Super Bowl because of this trade. They lost 3. But I am not going to tell you about the trade first. That would be too easy. That would let you think you already know this story. You do not know this story. Let me take you somewhere unexpected. Let me take you to a hotel room in San Diego, January 2003, 11 months after the phone call that changed everything. A man sits alone in the darkness. Outside his window, the city prepares for the biggest sporting event on the planet. Super Bowl 37 is less than 48 hours away. This man should be celebrating. His team has reached the championship game. His offense has been the most explosive in football. His quarterback has just won the league MVP award. But he is not celebrating. He is staring at a piece of paper, a game plan, a document that will determine whether the Oakland Raiders win or lose the Super Bowl. And he is about to do something that no head coach has ever done before. He is about to change that game plan 48 hours before kickoff, against the advice of every assistant coach in the building. Why would he do this? What could possibly justify altering a championship game plan at the last possible moment? I will tell you exactly why, but not yet. First, you need to understand what was on the other end of that telephone call in February 2002. You need to understand what the Raiders gave away. You need to understand the magnitude of the self-inflicted wound. The man the Raiders traded was not just a coach, he was a weapon, a competitive advantage so profound that opposing teams spent entire off-seasons trying to figure out how to stop his offense. At 38 years old, he was the most sought-after coach in professional football. He had transformed the Raiders from playoff hopefuls into championship contenders. He had developed a quarterback who had been discarded by half the league into the best signal caller in the AFC. His practices were legendary. His preparation was obsessive. His energy was nuclear. Players would run through walls for him. Veterans who had seen everything said they had never experienced anyone like him. Rookies who joined the team described the culture shock of entering his program. He demanded perfection. He accepted nothing less, and he produced results that justified every demand. Under his leadership, the Raiders went 38-26 in 4 seasons. They reached the playoffs twice. They were ascending towards something special. The roster was loaded. The system was perfected. The window was wide open. And then Al Davis answered that phone call. Stop. I need to tell you something about Al Davis before we continue. Something that explains everything and nothing at the same time. Al Davis was not a normal owner. He was not a businessman who happened to own a football team. He was a football man who happened to have enough money to own a team. He had coached, he had scouted, he had built rosters, he had moved franchises, he had sued the NFL and won. He had been fighting the establishment since before most current players were born. Al Davis did not answer to anyone. Al Davis did not follow conventional wisdom. Al Davis did what Al Davis wanted to do, and everyone else adjusted accordingly. This made him a genius when his instincts were right. It made him a disaster when his instincts were wrong. And on February 18, 2002, his instincts were catastrophically wrong. The phone call came from Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers wanted the Raiders' head coach. They were willing to pay an unprecedented price: 2 first-round draft picks, 2 second-round draft picks, $8 million in cash. Read those numbers again: 4 premium draft picks and $8 million for a coach, not a player, a coach. No trade like this had ever happened in NFL history. No coach had ever commanded this kind of value. Al Davis should have hung up the phone. He should have laughed at the offer and returned to building his championship roster. He should have recognized that no amount of draft picks could replace what he already had. Instead, he said yes. Why? The official story involves money and contract disputes. The coach wanted an extension and partial ownership. Davis was unwilling to meet those demands. The relationship had deteriorated. Both sides were ready to move on. This explanation is a lie. Not entirely false, but incomplete in ways that obscure the truth. The money was not the real issue. The contract was not the real obstacle. The real issue was control. Al Davis had built the Raiders by maintaining absolute authority over every decision. He chose the players. He influenced the schemes. He determined the direction of the franchise. The coach in question had started making decisions on his own. He wanted input on personnel. He wanted control over the roster. He wanted to build the team his way. For any other owner, this would have been a negotiation, a conversation about shared responsibility and mutual goals. For Al Davis, it was treason. Nobody challenged Al Davis. Nobody demanded power that Davis had not granted. Nobody told the Raiders owner how to run his franchise. So when Tampa Bay called with their unprecedented offer, Davis saw an opportunity. He could remove a subordinate who had grown too ambitious. He could acquire assets that would prove his roster-building genius. He could remind everyone that the Raiders belonged to him and him alone. He took the deal. And in that moment, the Oakland Raiders' Super Bowl window did not just close, it shattered into 1,000 pieces. Now let me take you forward. 10 months after the trade, January 2003. The Raiders have made the Super Bowl despite everything. Rich Gannon has been extraordinary. The offense has scored points at a historic pace. The defense has made plays when it mattered. Against all odds, Oakland has reached the championship game. Their opponent, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the team that now employs the coach Al Davis traded away. Do you understand the cruelty of this matchup? Do you grasp what the football gods were doing to the Oakland Raiders? They were not just facing another team, they were facing their own ghost. They were playing against the man who had built their offense, who knew every play, who understood every tendency. And they were being coached by his replacement, a man named Bill Callahan, a man whose name will live in Raiders infamy forever. Now we return to that hotel room in San Diego. Bill Callahan is staring at the game plan that his assistants have spent 2 weeks perfecting, the game plan designed to attack Tampa Bay's weaknesses while protecting against their strengths. It is a good plan. It emphasizes the running game, which has been effective all season. It uses play action to create deep shots. It protects Rich Gannon by limiting his exposure to Tampa Bay's ferocious pass rush. Callahan knows this plan can work. His assistants know it can work. His players have practiced it for 14 straight days. And then he changes it. The night before the Super Bowl, Bill Callahan scraps significant portions of the offensive strategy. He shifts toward a pass-heavy approach. He abandons concepts that his players have drilled relentlessly. When his assistants object, he overrules them. When his quarterback expresses confusion, he dismisses the concerns. 48 hours later, the Oakland Raiders lose Super Bowl 37 by the score of 48-21. Rich Gannon throws 5 interceptions. 3 are returned for touchdowns. The most explosive offense in football scores just 2 touchdowns against a defense that knew every single play before it happened. Because of course they knew. The coach on the Tampa Bay sideline had installed those plays. He had created those formations. He had developed those concepts over 4 years in Oakland. Jon Gruden stood on the opposing sideline and watched his former team run his offense against his current defense. He called out plays before they happened. He anticipated audibles before Gannon made them. He had every answer because he had written every question. The Raiders were not just beaten, they were humiliated by their own creation. And here is where the conspiracy begins. Tim Brown, the Raiders' Hall of Fame receiver, gave an interview years later that should have triggered an NFL investigation. He accused Bill Callahan of sabotage. He said Callahan hated the Raiders. He said the last-minute game plan changes were designed to ensure Oakland would lose. Jerry Rice confirmed key details. He verified the sudden changes. He acknowledged the confusion among players. The greatest receiver in NFL history stopped just short of calling his coach a traitor. Was Bill Callahan a saboteur? Did he deliberately destroy the Raiders' Super Bowl chances? I do not know. Nobody knows for certain. But I know this. If the Raiders had not traded Jon Gruden, the question would never need to be asked. Gruden versus Gruden was impossible. The Raiders would have had their championship coach. They would have had their system. They would have had the man who knew how to win on the biggest stage. Instead, they had a replacement who either betrayed them or collapsed under pressure. The result was the same either way. One Super Bowl, lost directly because of the trade. But I promised you 3. Let me show you what happened after Super Bowl 37. Let me show you the destruction that cascaded through this franchise for the next 15 years. The Raiders did not just lose a Super Bowl in 2003, they lost their identity. The roster that Gruden had built began to crumble. Rich Gannon, the MVP quarterback, suffered a career-ending injury the following season. The veteran core that had reached the championship game aged out rapidly. The draft picks acquired in the Gruden trade produced almost nothing of value. 2003, 7 wins, 9 losses. 2004, 5 wins, 11 losses. 2005, 4 wins, 12 losses. 2006, 2 wins, 14 losses.
Do you see the pattern? Do you see the franchise collapsing in slow motion? The Raiders went from Super Bowl participants to the worst team in professional football in just 3 seasons. They became a laughingstock, a punchline, a cautionary tale about organizational dysfunction. And it did not stop. From 2003 to 2015, the Oakland Raiders had 1 winning season. 1 in 13 years. They drafted poorly. They coached poorly. They made decisions that defied logic. The culture of excellence that Gruden had built evaporated completely. Meanwhile, what was Jon Gruden doing? He was winning. Not just the Super Bowl in his first season with Tampa Bay, he was building a consistent winner in one of the most difficult divisions in football. The Buccaneers made the playoffs multiple times under Gruden. They remained competitive throughout his tenure. They had stability and direction. Everything the Raiders lost, Tampa Bay gained. Now let me explain how this trade cost 3 Super Bowls, not just 1. Super Bowl number 1, the obvious one, 2002 season. If Gruden is still coaching the Raiders, they do not face him in the Super Bowl. They face a Buccaneers team without the coach who knows their system. They probably win. Championship number 1. Super Bowl number 2, 2003 season. If Gruden is still coaching, the roster does not collapse. Gannon probably stays healthy because the offensive system protects him properly. The Raiders remain contenders. With their talent level, another Super Bowl appearance is entirely possible. Championship number 2. Super Bowl number 3. This one requires imagination, but it is grounded in reality. If Gruden stays, the Raiders draft differently. They develop differently. They maintain the culture that produces winners. Somewhere between 2004 and 2010, another championship window opens. A window that never existed because the franchise spent those years in complete disarray. Championship number 3. 3 Super Bowls, 3 trophies that should be sitting in Las Vegas right now. 3 championship banners that will never hang because of one phone call in February 2002. Is this speculation? Yes. Championships are never guaranteed, but consider the evidence. The Raiders roster in 2002 was loaded with talent, multiple Hall of Famers, proven veterans, a system that had been perfected over 4 years. Jon Gruden was in his prime, 38 years old, decades of coaching ahead of him, no reason to believe he could not sustain excellence. The AFC was winnable. The Patriots dynasty had not yet fully formed. The path to championships was clear. Everything was aligned for a Raiders dynasty. Everything was in place for multiple championships. And Al Davis gave it all away because he could not share control. Let me tell you about the draft picks the Raiders received. 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, $8 million. With those picks, the Raiders selected Philip Buchanan, a cornerback who lasted 3 disappointing seasons in Oakland. They selected Napoleon Harris, a linebacker who contributed almost nothing before being traded. The other picks produced similar mediocrity, forgettable players who made no impact on the franchise. The $8 million disappeared into the operating budget, invisible and irrelevant. In exchange for Jon Gruden, the Raiders received approximately nothing. No Pro Bowlers, no building blocks, no players who mattered. Just cap space and broken dreams. Meanwhile, Jon Gruden went to Tampa Bay and immediately won a championship. The coach traded for draft picks outperformed every single player those picks produced.
This is what happens when ego overrides strategy. This is what happens when an owner prioritizes control over winning. This is what happens when the wrong person answers a phone call that should have been ignored. Al Davis died in 2011. He never won another Super Bowl after trading Gruden. He spent his final years watching his franchise crumble, watching the team he loved become unrecognizable. Did he regret the trade? He never said so publicly. Al Davis did not admit mistakes. It was not in his nature. But those who knew him said something changed after Super Bowl 37. Something broke when he watched his former coach lift the Lombardi Trophy using the team Davis had built. He had done it to himself. He knew it, and he had to live with that knowledge until the day he died. The Raiders trade that cost them 3 Super Bowls was not a football decision. It was a power struggle, and the person who won that struggle lost everything that actually mattered. There is one final detail I need to share with you. One detail that makes this story even more tragic. In 2018, the Raiders hired Jon Gruden again. They gave him a 10-year contract worth $100 million. They brought back the man they should never have let go. For a moment, it seemed like redemption was possible. The prodigal coach had returned. The mistake was being corrected. But it was too late. The roster was different. The league was different. Gruden was different. He went 22-31 over 3+ seasons before resigning in disgrace after old emails surfaced containing offensive language. The second Gruden era ended in humiliation rather than championships. The redemption arc never materialized. Even when the Raiders tried to fix their mistake, the universe would not let them. Some errors cannot be corrected. Some trades cannot be undone. Some phone calls, once answered, change everything forever. February 18, 2002. Al Davis answered a call from Tampa Bay. He heard an offer for his head coach. He did the math in his head, and he got the math completely wrong. 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, $8 million in exchange for 3 Super Bowls. That is the trade the Oakland Raiders made. That is the decision that haunts this franchise. That is the phone call that should have gone to voicemail.
If you are a Raiders fan, you already knew this story hurt. Now you know exactly how much it cost. 3 championships, 15 years of suffering, a legacy of what might have been. All because one man could not share power with another. The Oakland Raiders traded Jon Gruden for nothing, and they have been paying for it ever since. Some mistakes echo forever. This one echoes loudest of all. If this story made you feel the weight of what the Raiders lost, subscribe to this channel. We tell the stories that explain how the silver and black became what it is today. Share this video with every Raiders fan you know. They need to understand the full scope of what that trade destroyed. And comment below. Tell me where you were when you heard Jon Gruden had been traded. Tell me how it felt to watch him win the Super Bowl against your team. Because this is not just history, this is family trauma. And family trauma needs to be spoken about to ever be healed. The Raiders are still trying to heal from February 18th, 2002. 20 years later, the wound is still open.